Mention a trans person inside in the same sentence, and it's tenderhooks. Am I the only one that's sat here just thinking like this is like there's something really fundamentally wrong with what's going on here? I think the people that don't see what I'm seeing are either retarded, in denial, coping. This is disgraceful. This is disgraceful, and people are acting like it's like, yeah, no, actually, like to me, this is like disgusting. This is like really disgusting behavior that I'm witnessing. This is just so far removed from what I believe. That's not what reactionary means, you stupid bit. Reactionary doesn't mean reacting to things.
And I have like a, you know, like a little, like a Hitler closet that I go into and pray every night.
Oh, that black person over there. They just stole my purse and ran away. They stole my wallet and ran away. And the person said, well, that's because of socioeconomic conditions, though. You'd be like, what? I don't care. I just want my shit back. You know, it's like, no, like people don't want to be victims of crime. And that's like fine. If someone doesn't want to be a victim of crime, that's fine. But we need to bear that in mind when we're thinking about how we're dealing with these issues. Because it's true for me that these issues are not fundamental to race. It's not a racial thing. You know, crime is the outcome of a number of different complex, like, societal factors. But sometimes it just comes across that when you talk about the way that lefties talk about it, it comes across that there's like this lack of care or concern for the victims of crime. And if you're the victim of crime, if anyone does anything other than say like, oh, that was bad, and you know, let's try and sort it out, it's gonna sound fucking horrible. Segueing into some more Anna Conspiracy stuff.
Hey, my name.
So, I've got to be honest with you. I've heard about this. Let's listen to it and see. I've got a suspicion about what this might look like, but we'll see. We'll give it a chance. The title is Bad Faith Justifications for Trans Political Persecution Must Be Met with Militant Advocacy.
It's Cody. I'm calling from Denver.
Cody from Denver. What's on your mind?
Hey, this one, I'll try not to get emotional here. We just passed the 4-year anniversary of the loss of a friend in the Colorado comedy community. Some content warnings. It was a trans woman, and the way we lost her was a little dark. I think you guys know what I mean, but I really wanted to talk about the impact that the transphobic rhetoric has kind of on a personal level. Because kind of just going back.
Okay, yeah, I can see what's happening here already. Okay. This is honestly like, and I mean, I've skipped ahead a bit. I know what they pivot into. I didn't know exactly what this call was. This is honestly pretty despicable on the part of Majority Report, I must say. This is a really blackpilling moment for me on the Majority Report. The fact that they're going to do this. The fact they're going to do this. Let's just listen and you'll see, but dude.
Reminiscing and looking through social media posts that this person made in their last month, you can really kind of start to see the effect of a lot of that rhetoric on their mental state that led up to it. Now, this was like before Matt Walsh's What's a Woman and stuff like that. But there was still a lot of horrible rhetoric going out. And so one of the things that I had seen that they had posted in their last month was a rant, and I kind of wanted to share it a little bit. She said, if you feel transgender people are often opinionated and militant in their beliefs, it's true because we have to defend our existence constantly. When I first transitioned, I was the type to live and let live. Life goes on. I'm still that way. I don't actively attack people with and about who I am and why I demand a place. I love talking about it in my comedy because there's a lot that needs to be said, and it's hilarious too. And she was a very funny comic. Very fun person to be around.
I just, it's just funny to me because I remember, I'm trying to recall this correctly so I don't get it wrong. I remember when, like, there was an incel guy that called in. Correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, if anyone knows. But I remember there was an incel guy that called in. And they were, like, tripping over themselves to interrupt him, to dunk on him for what a fucking retarded incel he was. Am I remembering that correctly? Did that happen? I'm, like, 90% sure I'm remembering this correctly. Like an incel or an MRA guy or something like that, right? But I'm sure I remember someone like that calling in, and they were like desperately tripping over themselves to like try and shit on him, right? But here, trans person probably referencing the fact that they killed themselves, and it's like, you know, do not interrupt, do not say anything, let them say whatever they want. It's just kind of crazy to me. It's just kind of crazy to me. The kind of emotional manipulation that is kind of being indulged in, you know?
And then she says, but then I get the random messages. You know, you're an effed up gay dude. Have you ever heard Joe Rogan's podcast? Here's a link to Ben Shapiro. What do you say to his views? Then I hear conversations in public. A dude with an effed up penis. You're pretty passable. Then I'm approached by people in public, often after sets. Did you know you're just sick?
Well, the point I'm making is that it's like sacrosanct. It's like, you know, it's like sacrilegious to like in any way interfere or interrupt this person. Even though to me, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, you know, this is coming across as very like emotionally manipulative, you know, to front load it by mentioning the suicide aspect. You know, obviously, yeah, someone killing themselves is very tragic. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But I don't like it personally. Okay. People aren't going to like that take. People are going to say I'm being, you know, people are going to say, oh, no, I'm being mean. Or that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's being emotionally manipulative. And that's just how I feel about it.
Be in a hospital, you have an acute mental illness. I never asked for people to send me these links or videos. I never asked to have the conversation.
But it's what happens next that I think is particularly
they're coming up to me and initiating it. Now, when I finally talk back or do a post like this, I'm the one instigating. I'm defending my existence every day from random people. People get defensive if they have to be defensive a majority of the time, is what she said. And was met with a lot of support from our community. Now, what she's talking about there is definitely instances of I think, people that are very malicious in their transphobia.
But that's the tenderhooks, isn't it? Mention a trans person and suicide in the same sentence, and it's tenderhooks. You know, absolute tenderhooks on it. It's just like, it's tragic, okay? But I just don't like this idea that it's so sacrosanct. I mean, you know, I don't even know who this person is or anything about them. And because something tragic happened, we've got to just accept everything that's being said about it. I just don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. I think that's stupid. You know, I don't know who this person was. Even if all of this was true, you'll see what happens later. But like the way that it's then going to be used, like, look, you know, presuming based on the title of the video, maybe I'm wrong, but it's obviously going to be, this kind of suicidality is going to be like utilized to push the way certain things should be in public discourse, right? Again, I know people are going to find this like distasteful, but no, that's not how it should work at all. Do we base our decisions on society in like the most tragic aspects of when it goes wrong? Like, that's crazy. It's just crazy to me. You know, it's tragic and we need to look at the situation and assess how we can make it different in the future. But I don't think that the solution is to, like, you know, engage in just militant advocacy endlessly because of what happened, you know?
Yeah, which is a huge problem.
Be nice to fragile people that are likely to off themselves. But you see what a difficult position that puts the world in? You're basically holding everyone hostage with a gun to your fucking head. Do you not see the problem with that? How can people not see why that's an issue? Like, that's bad. You shouldn't do that.
Now, about a week after that, she kind of shared the other side of transphobia within her family, where you get these folks, they watch Tucker or Shapiro or Rogan or whatever, and they're convinced that if you love your trans child, you'll convince them that they're not trans. So she had shared a screenshot from what her mom had sent her, and she said, "I love you so much I would die for you." But
and the thing is as well, right, I have got absolutely, it sounds bad, I've got totally fair, legitimate criticisms of this and what happens next, okay? But anyone listening to this will just soy out and go, oh no, you're being mean to someone that's talking about someone killing themselves. And I've said it's tragic, obviously, but I just don't agree with this premise that you should be able to use these situations to your kind of political narrative and political advantage. I think that's fucked.
but you aren't a woman, and what you're doing isn't right. Read Romans 1. Homosexuality is a sin. You may not want to talk to me anymore, and God made you a man for some reason, and he never makes mistakes. I love you and don't want to lose you, but I'm hurting and angry and worried, and I think what you're doing is out of anger, depression, and is self-mutilation. So in this post, she said, I'm not doing okay right now. So again, huge outpouring of folks being supportive in that, supporting her among our friend groups. Now, we had a scary day a couple weeks after that where she'd gone missing, and ultimately we never get to see her again. But it gets more frustrating because after she passed, we found the eulogy, the obituary that her parents had put in. This was up in Laramie, Wyoming. Really great history of being supportive of LGBTQ people there.
Right.
But
am I the only one that's sat here just thinking like this is like there's something really fundamentally wrong with what's going on here to me? Like, am I just becoming more and more conservative or what? Like, this is fucked as far as I'm concerned. I think this is totally fucked the way this situation is being used to push a political agenda. And this is the fundamental problem at the heart of some of these trans issues, is it is the barrel of a gun to your own head, do what I want, do what I say, and validate me. And this is like a prime example of that happening right now. Am I crazy? Am I a bad person? I don't know. I think it's bad to do this. I don't like this at all. I think this is wrong.
They, in the obituary, they misgendered her. They used her dead name. And you really see that if you lose your child and that's not enough for you to realize, that you need to be kinder and rethink things, and the whole reason that they ended up leaving this world, you're still going to double down on it, was pretty awful. So we saw this in our community, and we made sure that our local magazine, Westward, here in Denver, wrote a proper obituary that really actually gave credit, properly gendered her, and celebrated her life in a way that I guess our folks weren't willing to. But all this stuff being said, this is where, like, when folks see us being activists to try to help trans people, LGBTQ communities and whatnot, I'll constantly hear like, oh, you guys are just a bunch of woke social justice warriors and you're just virtue signaling and looking for clout. And it's like, dude, I just miss my friend. I'm never going to see my friend again. And it's because, you're dumb. I identify as a whatever, meme that they have to see every day. And it just... Okay,
but the thing is, one thing I would say, it does sound like this person knew someone and they were more engaged at a more fundamental level with some of this stuff. But he's dismissing, like, the I identify thing. When, like, online, the I identify thing has been used as a valid argument by some trans people.
Anybody listening that is trans, no, there's a lot of love and support for you when you have to sift through all the bullshit out there that's dehumanizing.
Okay, they're calling for compassion. Do you not understand my issue, though? If you do a call-in show that's just like call in and talk about sad things, okay? That's cool with me. Call in and talk about sad stuff. Oh, my trans friend killed themselves. That's very tragic and very sorry that happened. Oh, it sounds like the parents were awful. Sure. But this the fusion of the political narratives which are about to come. Maybe it's because I've seen ahead and I'm particularly bothered by it. But it's the fusion of political narratives within that as well that I find to be a problem, It's like this kind of emotional appeal that's then made off the back of this, where you're, holding that suicidality over discourse in order to get your own ends rather than basing it on the best possible arguments, whatever,
Humanizing you, but we care about you,
Yep. And, I can imagine it's also like times like this, too, where it feels like it's never, ever going to get better. And I don't know that we're not going to go through a period of time where it doesn't get a little bit worse. But, I think hopefully, and I don't think it's being too Pollyannish to assume that it is just it is a matter of time. And it's hard to say that to people who are living through the pain that is exerted by this era and by people around at this time. Is what's the value of their life, or the pain becomes too hard to live for. But in some ways, also, helping people in the future. But it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to make that argument in this era. I mean, there's no doubt. But I really appreciate
Thank you for
the call.
sharing that story.
I hope you're right. All right, left is best. Have a good day.
I'm so
All right,
sorry.
thanks for the call.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the people that don't see what I'm seeing are either retarded, in denial, coping, or locked in some sort of weird progressive mind prison, okay? Because I'm looking at this and it's clear as fucking day what's going on. It's clear as fucking day what's happening. It's very obvious what's happening. But we've got to sit round and just go, just literally, it's a fucking soy nod moment. It's a literal fucking soy nod moment, okay? We've literally got to sit round soy nodding.
It is
Give me a
that whole
fucking
thing
break.
of like, oh, trans people are really militant. Like, you're the one with the sudden opinions about trans athletes, you weirdo.
Exactly.
Jeez.
Look at that. Look at immediately pivoting to your fucking political narrative. Is this not fucking... This is disgraceful. This is fucking disgraceful. And people are acting like it's like, yeah, no, actually, this is totally fine to do. Give me a fucking break, will you?
Jesus.
Exactly. I mean, it's quite obvious what's going on in our society today. And people should know that. I mean, and, particularly like when particularly places where either identify as allies or should be allies.
And then...
Like, none of these issues are seen in a narrow perspective. And I guess to a certain extent, I'm talking specifically about TYT.
Immediately, off the back of that call, pivot to talk about the TYT stuff. Like, to me, this is like disgusting. This is like really disgusting behavior that I'm witnessing. Taking that call, using the emotional energy that you've gathered from it to then take shots at TYT over the recent drama that they've engaged in, when it's got like nothing to do with them at all, and maybe, so he's supposed to be silent. No, say your piece about TYT, but you're emotionally front-loading it of someone talking about the trans friend committing suicide to give it an undue emotional weight. That's what's happening here. And that's, I think, one of the things that I find so distasteful about this. Okay.
A lot of stuff went down. I'm still sort of catching up on this. The last I had heard was, Red was...
Who cares? Okay, right, you're getting banned. Yep, easy ban. There we go. Too retarded for my chat. Get the fuck out of here. Go and watch one of you retarded leftoids spout the fucking pro-trans position. Trans rights is human rights, guys. Yeah, we better do what they want or they're going to kill themselves. Trans rights is human rights, guys.
It's like Anna's tweet, like, I don't know, it was like 2 months ago or something or whatever that was.
Literally, within a few minutes of that call ending, they've pivoted it off to make a reference to the trans sports conversation, and then they're using it as an opportunity to shit on TYT. This is fucking insane behavior on the part of this show to do that. When that call has got like nothing to do at all with the TYT stuff, but they're using it to build emotional weight to make this point. They could have given a take on TYT totally separate to this. They could have just said their piece. Like, this is disgraceful behavior to me from, this sort of progressive news network.
And let me, be clear on a couple of things. Because, I don't want to spend too much time on this. But Em obviously came from TYT. She has a different set of relationships over there. I don't really make a lot of friends in this business, in part because I'm just a standoffish person. But also part of it is that, like, when I was in comedy, there was always this story that I had read about this group of comedians in the...
You think it's a business move? Damn. That is a very cynical take. That is a very fucking cynical take. Maybe. I don't know. I just find it very distasteful to pivot off of that call to then, you know, go on like in a sort of a criticism of TYT. Thank you for the bits, Pans.
This motherfucker was in comedy? Oh, hell no.
And again, you know, if you want to do the call, fine. I personally wouldn't watch that because I find it to be a bit emotionally manipulative, but whatever. Good luck to you. Okay. Do the TYT segment. Blending them both together, to me, just comes across as like a very despicable thing to do. Like you're using that emotional weight you've built from someone talking about the suicide of their trans friend to then shit on TYT over this recent drama that's happened.
God, I can't remember what the name of this crew of comedians was called at the time, but Alexi Sales is one of them. He wasn't even one of the better comedians in my estimation of that crew.
Like, because here's the other thing too. The other reason it's so fucked is because TYT are not pushing any of the rhetoric that was responsible for that person's death. As much as progressives will try and say that's the case, clearly there are a lot of issues with like the parents not accepting them and things like that, which to my knowledge, I don't think TYT has ever spoken out against. I think TYT has ever turned around and said, oh yeah, conservatives, you're based for disowning your LGBT kids, right? The issue is with some of the unsavory ideas they're pushing, like the birthing person thing, some of the unscientific concepts they're pushing, like the women in sports, the trans women in sports question, and the, unnecessarily aggressive and militant advocacy that doesn't really seem to be gaining anything. That is what TYT is concerned with. And although they try and make a link, I don't think any of that is responsible for what happened to this tragedy to this person. But they're then making this link by connecting the two in this video. And I think, that's what I find particularly, egregious as well.
Like Rowan Atkinson and I don't know, a bunch of others like that in the late 80s. But he had this thing where he said, like, the worst thing about success is that you become friends with Phil Collins and then you can't really be honest about how bad his music is. You can't make fun of his music. And I know it's a weird thing, a weird quote to remember for over 35 years. But that has stuck with me. So when people say like, you're not talking about Anna or Jank or this and that because of friendships, I can assure you that is not the case. I mean, I have nothing against Anna, but I've never been friends with her. Like, I haven't been non-friends with her. Like, I think I've spoken to her once, maybe. I don't know, in person. For me, the issue is this. Why what they're doing is wrong, and I don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
Here we go.
But with this, let me just put it in contrast to like why I do this and why I think everybody here does this. We do this here because of the politics first. And then, like, I don't know what the percentage is, but I realize, like, we have to be entertaining, and I like being entertaining, and it's fun in that regard, and this and that, and you can't be just, and I don't even have the mental capacity to just be doing, like, 3 hours of dry interviews. But the point is that what dictates what we do here, and I remember, like, years and years ago, I would get arguments with a caller, like, I shouldn't refer to what we do here as propaganda. Propaganda to me has always been a value neutral term. It is when you have an ideology or a set of issues that you're promoting or whatever it is, you are putting out content in it with an eye to that. I think, like, you could argue that in some way, like, all media is propagandistic in the sense that someone's making an editorial decision. even what they deem to be newsworthy, is making an editorial decision. The point being is that we are living in an era right now, which is undeniable, where the right wing, there's been plenty of reporting about this. The Republican Party, the right wing, the conservative movement, all those things, there's not a lot of daylight between any of those things, specifically was shopping around for something to motivate its fundamentalist base. And
the thing is, I don't even necessarily disagree that the right use trans stuff as a wedge issue. I think that's just true that they do that. But what I hate is this idea that, like, oh, well, the right are doing this. We've got to respond with the absolute worst possible fucking takes on trans issues that we possibly can. Like, no, we don't have to do that at all. Like, have the right takes, not rooted in just not wanting to agree ever with the right, which is often what it seems like with this trans stuff, but rather like, pushing where it matters, pushing where you can get the gains, where it matters, and not fighting, which is exactly what TYT said, not fighting on things which are not only unpopular, but also don't seem to have much basis in fact either. Like the idea that trans women can participate in sports with no qualms, no questions, no issues, nothing.
Welcome.
Which doesn't seem to be true. Like, why fight on that front? It's so stupid. It's unpopular, and I don't even believe it's true. So, yeah. What's this? Virginia Dems flipped the governor to Republican, with their main concern being schools leaving parents in the dark about their kids. Wait, sorry, I don't know that. But so are you saying the Democrats lost the seat or lost some political power because they pushed or allowed schools to not tell parents what was going on with the kids? Am I understanding it correctly? Was it definitely because of that, though? See, this is the problem with all these regional races. I don't know enough about them to say conclusively. Yeah, but why? But okay, but there could be other reasons for that. Okay. I can't look. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go into the intricacies of that particular issue, okay? So I'll remain, skeptical either way about it, okay?
Fall in the wake of gay marriage, not causing typhoons and dogs and cats falling from the sky, they came upon transphobia. And the way that it ended up playing out was in the context of it dovetailed with some schooling issues and CRT and keeping people home from school and this and that, which not to imply that this is something that's incredibly novel, but in terms of its growth, it is quite clear what's going on here. There's a concerted effort to do this. You do not spend $50 million in a campaign in Michigan on trans issues unless there is a concerted effort to do that. So that's one reality that lives, that exists right there.
Also, I feel like some of this stuff is just easy wins for progressives. But again, they just, you can just dismiss the most extreme aspects of the conservative narrative too. Like this, I think that some of the extremity the right have pushed around trans stuff, like kind of the what's that guy's name? Matt Walsh. The Matt Walsh trans stuff. Like that does just come across as hateful, I think, to people. I think the issue comes you could easily just push back against that, and I don't think you're gonna lose anything by saying Matt Walsh is a hateful person and he's pushing hateful rhetoric. Obviously he got some good optics gains with his what is a woman shtick, but when you actually get to the extremity of his views, I don't think that stuff is particularly popular amongst the voter base. But the issues that it comes to a head, where it comes to when it's about kids or what's in schools or the trans sports issues, that's the stuff where I think progressives can do a better job to make their position known. If we are going to talk about the trans stuff, that's the place that you're going to win and get the gains. Because I don't think you're losing anything by
Enjoy your
saying,
time off,
yeah,
Logic.
you shouldn't be getting gender confirmation surgery if you're under 18. And that also is how it is in a lot of other places. This is the funny thing about it that I find about America, is they fight battles on the craziest grounds. But then if you look at other countries, like for example, the abortion thing, right? Progressives seem insistent on pushing this concept of like up to the fucking 9-month elective abortions, right? When, for example, in the UK, it's illegal to get an abortion after an elective abortion after 24 weeks. And it's fine. It works great. There's no massive problems with abortion here. People can get their abortion before 24 weeks. If after 24 weeks an abortion is needed for medical reasons, then that's fine. You can get that. And there isn't ever any... I cannot think of a case where a woman is getting prosecuted, for an abortion that's medically necessary after 24 weeks. Right? That's how it can work. It can work like that. But for some reason, progressives seem totally unable. Who's pushing for Lance was on fucking, Tim Pool. And he said that he wasn't willing to say that women shouldn't get elective abortions at 9 months because that's her body, her choice. Lance said exactly that on one of the biggest conservative shows going. Whereas you can just say, no, obviously, like, this is the answer. Elective abortions at 9 months are insane. If a medical one is needed, we should allow that. Right? If a medical one is needed, we should allow that. But elective abortion should not be allowed at 9 months. Easy peasy. It's how we do it in the UK, and everything's fine here.
Leads to cases falling through the cracks.
Thank you for the bits.
We already have cases where women who wanted an abortion before 24 weeks have to wait longer because of red state bullshit.
But you're talking about like what? A fucking absolute fringe of cases. How many cases even is that? Where someone wanted to get the abortion before and then they've got to get it after. You can carve stuff like that out in the legislation. But that's the that's the issue. That's the point I'm getting across to you. Is you've got such an absolute perspective with progressive politics in America, where there's other places around the world where they approach it with a different angle and are able to, have had legislation in place for literally years about this stuff with no significant big issues. But for some reason, progressives in America seem insistent on arguing the worst possible versions of some of these policies.
And the other reality may be that in your mind, you have an issue with what goes on in women's sports. I'm just going to stipulate that, I'm just going to say that's sincere. That you really care about women's sports, okay? And you have some really thoughtful or even non-thoughtful ideas about what should happen in women's sports. If you do what...
This progressive talking point is so retarded, okay? Obviously, a lot of people don't meaningfully care about women's sports in terms of they don't go and watch the games, they don't engage with it, they don't watch it, and they may even deride it at times, okay? Because the problem is, what people care about is fairness. That's what people are truly concerned about. They might never watch women's sports, but what they care about is a concept of fairness. And if, particularly in America, if people feel like things are unfair, right? Okay. If people feel, obviously the people like that are in the sports are different, but I'm just saying broadly, if someone is told something is happening that isn't fair, people are going to get on board with that. Okay. And the reality is, based on the information that exists, it does seem to be the case that in some sports, even if you do transition, you do retain some biological advantage from going through male puberty, leading to an unfair situation. This is something that isn't just in the science and the studies. This is something now that sports organizations are finding is the case and are making decisions accordingly and are setting, lines in the sand over it. No one gives a shit about fairness. Ask that one cyclist that loves steroids. If you're talking about Lance Armstrong, you're literally fucking retarded. Lance Armstrong was kicked out of the fucking sport, wasn't he? And is considered to be like a cheater and is negatively viewed by pretty much everyone. Like, what planet are you on? Yeah, that's a great example of what I mean, because they were like, oh, he was cheating. Get rid of him.
We do here, which is what is going to help not immiserate a specific group of people, or what is going to mitigate doing that, or how do we protect those people? even if you believe deep down, like I feel very strongly
Armstrong got his medals taken from him. Jesus.
About, women's sports.
Right.
Which, people can be a little skeptical of that case in some instances. But regardless, I'm sure there's somebody. It is incumbent upon you, you don't have to speak about it. Because...
Maybe I had too much faith in Sam Seder here. Is he genuinely saying, shut up? Is he genuinely just saying, shut the fuck up and don't talk about an issue? No way. Absolutely no way is he saying this. Come on.
Women's sports.
Right.
Which, people can be a little skeptical of that case in some instances. But regardless, I'm sure there's somebody. It is incumbent upon you, you don't have to speak about it. Because it is contributing to an environment that is wreaking violence on I'm so disconnected from all of this. Is just not my politics whatsoever. I'm so glad that I made the decision to just start to kind of excise myself and move away and sort of, have my... This is just so far removed from what I think and what I believe. This is literally the don't talk about it because you're just validating right-wing narratives. That is wreaking violence on a group of people in our society who have very little political or material protection.
That's unreal, man.
And that's just the reality of it. There is no excuse. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm not going to shut up about my opinions. It is incumbent upon you, and it's acutely problematic if this is the biggest online left of center outlet that exists.
Yeah. And I will say that
Does he? Okay. So he is now arguing that TYT shouldn't speak on this because they're causing violence on trans people. Yeah, this is like... up until this point, there's been a lot of things they've done which I've taken issue with. What was the last... I mean, there's a few things. Remember their coverage of the Rittenhouse case? That was fucking dog shit. Total dog shit coverage of the Rittenhouse case. I don't know. I just always had a bit more faith that Sam Seder was someone who was a bit more well-rounded and reasonable. And I don't expect him to even necessarily agree. Like, he could come out and he could say, well, actually, I think a different thing about this or whatever. Like, that's fine. But the fact he's trying to attribute violence to what TYT is saying is just, that's like a red line for me. That's just like insanity. And I guess I just had some residual faith in what this show was, And then this is their take on the situation. They, jump off the back of a caller calling about his trans friend committing suicide because of how horrible his parents were to them from the sounds of it, to then pivot into talking about TYT off the back of trans sports and then accuse TYT of engaging in rhetoric that causes violence against trans people. I just... Oh man, the year of the fascist. 2023 is the year of the fascist.
If you do choose to speak about it, which I think I have in particular, I will go further and say I think it's incumbent upon you, if you are a part of the left, to be militant in support of trans activists, because I think
this is just so far removed from what I believe. I cannot possibly on any planet agree with this. You must agree with trans activists if you're on the left. It's mind-boggling to me. I just cannot believe that someone is unironically saying these words out of their mouth.
Excuse that's given is that this is a wedge issue and not conceding the point that somebody might have a different muscle structure if they're a trans person, blah, 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 is helping the right. I don't agree with that at all, actually. I think conceding the framing is much more helpful to the right than being an advocate. I think being an advocate, you're providing a counter narrative for a wedge issue that is being used cynically by the right, not being brought up by the leftist activists or the trans activists. They're responding to it with protection.
They're responding to it with like anti-scientific statements that go against what we seem to currently understand about this issue. Like, I mean, she's one to talk. Do you remember when she... What was? Who's got that clip of her talking about trans stuff? It's anti-reality. It is, you know, this is no different to the things they would criticize the right for when it comes to actually discussing and engaging with reality. You know, ignore reality for the purpose of our political narrative. Like, I don't know. Who's got the clip of her talking about the transport stuff? You know the one I mean? Man, this is very blackpilling, I must say. This is super blackpilling. Maybe I was just being naive. But honestly, I didn't expect this to be this bad. I had a bit more faith in Sam Seder than this, but it just seems like he is completely and utterly thrown his oar in with the endless insanity of the extremity of the progressive movement. But hey. Do I need to find the clip? I'm going to come back as a far-right commentator, I think. That's my plan.
It's inverted, the focus.
But even that, like, first off, we can see data.
Oh, thank you. Here we go. This is it.
Slam Cedar, Emma, there's tons of evidence regarding testosterone levels and height, strength, and speed between people with XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes. Matt's citation off cases about the Olympics is pertinent, but an argument for better planning and more transparent discussions. Your argument is really bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a shit about the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because the societal interest of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this. Anyway. Dr. Shock, I agree. Let's get rid of weight classes in all combat sports. Perhaps have grown men compete in Little League. Sometimes, or I mean, honestly, like women's sports, it's barely an institution. It's only been around for a few decades. Like, if our sources of our outlets for entertainment, for competition,
she is literally calling to unravel a bunch of work that has happened in society to get women a place where they can actually compete in sports. It's crazy, man. It's mental.
For like, I don't know however to define them. But if they're not able to accommodate trans people, then they're not worthy of existing. Like, it's just like we're talking about movie theaters. What are we talking about here? I mean, I love sports as much as anyone, but if they cannot accommodate, including trans people, I don't give a shit about them being robust. It's just, you know, be inclusive or don't be. That's it.
Oh,
don't
yeah.
Exist.
Actually, good point. Who's fueling the right wing again? Is it the people that are calling on certain topics to have a more moderate position that reflects both the data and also public opinion? Is it that, or is it this person saying, "Well, we should just abolish trans sports if they can't, women's sports if they can't withstand trans people?" Dude.
You're a bad mom if you can't explain that there are people along a gender spectrum and it's not this binary. Like, I mean, I hear this all the time. My daughter plays sports. What am I going to tell to her? You know, it's not fair to her to compete with this kind of person. Honestly, you know, I have a sports podcast. I love sports as much as anyone. Trans women should be able to compete without question in women's sports because there are a lot of instances where there are athletes who, there's not even evidence to show that this is the case, but just take their assertion at face value for a second that this is some unfair advantage. I mean, there's an unfair advantage all the time in sports. That's actually quite, that's the nature of sports. That some people are physically or more gifted, or they have like a better mentality. We should have banned Yao Ming from basketball because he's just too tall. It's not fair for everybody else.
The children.
You're a bad
The thing that occurred to me about that trans sports IM is they said the thing about we need to have they granted my point about the actually this has gone too far and we're disallowing what they call biological women from going on sports, but they say we need to have a nuanced conversation or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We were having that as a society until the GOP decided to make trans people the target of their political campaigns. So that's the problem, and maybe we can get back to this purely intramural academic debate about these things once the fascists start using them to animate their base. The thing that occurred to me.
Jesus. Okay, let's just.
Yeah. We can see data, and we know how this plays in elections.
We saw it in this last midterms. Yeah.
Now, you can show me a poll that says people don't want, trans women to play in women's sports, but I can also show you a poll that 75% of people want gun control. If you want to come and say that this is an electoral issue, come with data.
Wait a second. Okay, that's a really stupid point, though, because the problem with 75% of being people is irrelevant because in the American fucking political system, gun control is protected by the First Amendment. The right to own a weapon is protected by the First Amendment. So any effort to implement gun control is always going to be hindered by an absolute legal right to own a weapon in the United States. Oh my God, man. Oh my God, these people are so dumb.
Data.
I'm not even American and I fucking understand that. How do these people not fucking grasp that concept? It's like saying 100% of people, 75% of people think there should be more limits on free speech. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people want that, okay? You've got the First Amendment. So you're kind of fucked, aren't you, unless you change that. Yes, it is possible to change it, but there's absolutely no political willpower to do so. The best that you're going to get, okay, is, maybe some additional checks or something in place in certain states. You might be able to get a situation where there's additional checks that may be implemented in order to limit usage amongst people that are maybe higher risk of committing. That's probably the best you're going to get. But actually changing the amendment is incredibly difficult, and it would require, a level of political willpower, political capital across both parties, across the entirety of the American political system to actually get that to get changed. And not only that, not only is it difficult to have that political capital, it would also go against, a massive component of the United States that are pro-gun ownership too. So I just don't really think it's fair to compare, a position on that to something which is going against a constitutional protection.
I can show you a poll that MLK had a 25% approval rating at the time of his death. I mean, we can't just be fighting for what's popular in the moment, because then you're saying that you can't change the framing around that.
But even if you're saying,
the thing is, here's the thing. It's not necessarily just focusing on what's popular. There's two aspects to this, okay? Something can be unpopular and you can still push for it, but it also has to be true. It also has to be true and correct if you want to push for it, right? Like, obviously, there was a time when it was more supported of Jim Crow laws and whatever, right? But the truth of it was that black people do deserve the same rights as white people, right? That's a true sentiment, okay? Unless you're like a race realist or something, right? So it's okay to push in the face of opposition to that. But if you're pushing against something that is not only popular, that is not only unpopular, but also untrue, then you're kind of fucked, aren't you? Then you're kind of fucked. So I just think that, it's pushing for trans rights. Trans will deserve the same rights too. Trans will deserve the same rights. However, if it's an issue of sports participation and it's shown that trans women have got an advantage in a given sport, no, I don't think they do have an absolute right to compete.
It's popular in the moment. It's not resonating from an electoral standpoint. That's why I think that is
it's granted too much to the anti-trans people.
Exactly.
Right.
I think that is a bullshit excuse.
They aren't the post
because you would lead with that. Okay. As much as we heard, it's one thing to say, I don't think, defund the police is the most artful slogan there is. But to harp on it, you're just doing the work of what it turned out to be the corporate Democrats who wanted an excuse for why they were going to lose their elections, as opposed to the reality of the whole thing.
In fact, that does help corporate Democrats. It's a good point.
And it's very hard for me to believe. Well, let me put it this way. It's incumbent upon people who do what we do to be able to make that assessment. And that is I have no idea what's going on over there. I'm not in contact with anybody over there. And my speculation and conjecture is no more informed, probably less so, than, people in this audience. But in terms of what I think is a responsibility and where a bar lies, while we're at it, in terms of the affirmative action thing, if anybody, including Jank, thinks that, black people are going to get more respect now in colleges because there's no affirmative action, you're insane. That's absurd.
Yeah. I mean, to put it as succinctly as possible, there's a finite number of things that we can focus on. Matt says that quite a bit. And I think it's incredibly important in our industry to focus on the things that are going to make sure.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I'm starting to maybe agree a little bit, at least. Maybe somewhat. Maybe there's maybe subconsciously perhaps. But it does come across a bit like, oh, hey guys, TYT are being transphobic and they think affirmative action is bad, and they like the fact it's gone. Oh, don't worry, guys, we're here for you. Come on into our audience. I mean, they are pretty much the same concept, right? Like in terms of like a progressive news show. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't think they were like friends or anything. But it's just so wild to me that this show is using, I mean, obviously don't forget how this started. It started off as playing that call or talking to that person who's trans and committed suicide to pivot into this segment now. I don't know if they were friends or anything, but I mean, if they'd have just gone live and done a segment and they'd just gone, hey, this is what we think about it, it's fine. But the kind of emotional baggage and weight they've tried to attach to it and some of the shitty arguments they're making is wild to me.
Or that there are as much protections as humanly possible for trans people, for marginalized communities in this country. And I believe that focusing on the language of activists that are on the margins and that are incredibly anecdotal.
Okay. This is it's like gaslighting or something, right? If it's on the margins, right? Just look at it and go, yeah, that sucks and it's bad. They shouldn't do that. Why is it so fucking difficult? It's like with the fucking, gender, the gay pride shit. Like, they can't just, why is it progressives are so fucking incapable of looking at something that sucks and just going, yeah, that sucks. They shouldn't do that. It's so fucking... Why is it so impossible for these people? If it's on the fringe, good. You think it's not that prevalent, good. Look at a situation and go, yeah, that's fucked up. They shouldn't do that. It's honestly that simple. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
Is, in fact, serving a far-right agenda.
100%.
Yeah.
And it is...
And he's agreeing with that. And he's agreeing with that. And he's fucking agreeing with this. Dude. The progressives are so hopelessly lost, man. So hopelessly, tragically lost. It's unreal. I hope DeSantis or Trump win. I really do. I think that would be funny. Now, at this point, I'm just giga blackpilled on it. I just want Trump or DeSantis to win.
Serving a far-right agenda. Focusing on the language of activists that are on the margins and that are incredibly anecdotal. Is, in fact, serving a far-right agenda.
100%.
Yeah.
And it is really problematic to have the...
He just said problematic, man. He just said fucking problematic. Oh my God, what is going on over at Majority Report, dude?
Biggest center of left you know, I don't know where you want to put them or where they would put themselves on some type of spectrum, whatever.
Progressives, home and progressives is the title.
I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah, and that's not just the two of them that work there, I want to say, right? Like, there are a lot of great people that work in TYT. A lot of great people who are leftists and progressives that I don't think want to be associated with this.
Right. I mean, but without like even getting into like the internal politics there, that's for people to you know, suss out themselves. I have always had both a tremendous amount of respect for people who say like, I don't like this work environment and I'm going to do whatever I can to reverse it. And if part of that means I'm going to quit this.
I felt like that when the Jannies left. Honestly, I felt like that when the Jannies left. I thought that was great. I thought that was really sticking it to the man when those Jannies left.
Job, and I'm going to do it in a public way. I mean, we've begged people to do that during the course of like the Iraq War and whatnot. Certainly, there was a ton of that, you know, with the. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. I also understand, because of the nature of the society we live in, that there may be people there who are like, you know, whatever it is, the job that I do here is not terribly easily replicated somewhere else. And this is a time of contraction with these things. And, you know, I've got college loans because you know, I just, you know, bought a house or I've got a car payment or whatever.
This is, I mean, this is, you know, part of this is just the left's endless obsession with identity-based issues. I remember a little while ago, my kind of takes would have got me called like a class reductionist and you'd be seen as a bad person. But like, yeah, like the left is just, the left online at least, there's just this endless focus and obsession with identity-based, race issues, trans issues, whatever, you know? This is just another symptom of that, I think. Oh, sad, but it is what it is, I guess. Well, I guess TYT are now my go-to progressive network to watch.
It is. I also, you know, have a tremendous amount of like sympathy and understanding for people in that situation.
Oh, you're a Nazbol. You're a Nazbol for thinking class issues are more important than identity-based issues. You're a Nazbol. The Nazbol vortex. Oh, do you remember the Nazbol vortex? Oh my God, that was so cringe. Do you remember that? When people were talking about there being this Nazbol vortex, and if you spoke about class too much and not enough identity, you were going to get sucked into it.
The bottom line is there are, you know, prominent voices that run that network or that project out that network. And it is wrong of them to be playing nuance. And this is, I'm trying to be charitable here, playing nuance with an issue that is so clearly drummed up to inflict pain on people. They're hoping for electoral gain. I don't think they'll necessarily get the electoral gain, although it strengthens, you know, if I'm in a red state and I can pass a law, I'm going to stay in office. It's not necessarily going to, you know, impact Joe Biden's reelection. It's not even going to impact like in the purple districts. I think it cuts against him in the purple districts.
And standing up for trans rights might get young Gen Z people out more than turning.
Okay, this is, I mean, you know, this is just a completely anti-electoral take. The idea that talking about trans rights will get Gen Z people out, okay? Dude. It's hard enough getting Gen Z people out to vote at the best of times.
Small people on the margins to vote Democrat.
Again,
yeah.
There's this is not a data first argument that people are making. And all the morons who've been making a data first argument, they had to end up like, you know, reversing themselves anyways on a lot of this stuff. Yeah. I mean, so like, I only acknowledge it because I want to say that I think that is a red herring and a bullshit excuse.
And if leftist critique causes you to change your worldview or adjust your approach that drastically, that is definitionally reactionary.
Well, I mean...
Actually, no, it's not. That's not what reactionary means, you stupid fucking bitch. Reactionary doesn't mean reacting to things. Oh my God. Stop misusing the word reactionary, please, I'm begging you.
I heard this from Dave Rubin, on how mean leftists were and that they left him. And listen, if you're doing like any type of like show like this, you're going to hate everybody. Not that you should hate. I don't think there's any value in everybody hating you or not. Whatever.
Means you're doing something right.
You're going to hate everybody because people.
No, well, I mean, I'm coming to the conclusion maybe that I was just naive, but I didn't think that this show was this severely on the Kool-Aid of progressive bullshit. I honestly didn't realize it was this bad. It was just severe, at least. I thought they were a bit more reasonable, a bit more sound in their views and their analysis, but they've really gone off the deep end. Maybe it happened a long time ago.
People are going to be rude and think that they're, and for it to alter your perspective and your analysis as to who is marginalized, who is in danger, what's going to provide the greatest amount of relief, help, support, material gain for the greatest amount of people, then you should be in a different business to begin with. But also, like, give me an effing break. There is no doubt in my mind that if we were sitting here and we're doing a right-wing show, I wouldn't be considered an asshole, and I would get invited on places, and I would be going and hanging out and skateboarding and eating sushi and this and that, like the warm embrace of these people. Like, yeah. Again, what is that? Mr. Death? Was it Mr. Death? The Errol Morris
documentary.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Mr. Beast.
Yeah,
No.
I think it's like a Tim Pool jab. I never really got to the bottom of this claim, that because obviously Tim claimed that he invited him, and Sam said, I don't really know what the root of that drama was and who was right and who was wrong. But yeah, they definitely don't like Tim Pool. Let's put it that way.
Mr. Death. This is a guy who's a lonely guy who was like a consultant for states when they would kill people with capital punishment. And somebody, some Holocaust deniers, he had said something like the effect of like, oh, I find it hard to believe they could have used Zyklon B. And he became completely embraced by the Holocaust denying Nazi community, and became like, just was living it up.
Yeah.
They were so much nicer to.
Wait, why is he invoking some nutter talking about Holocaust? What's this got to do with anything? Why is he talking about this? All DYT have said is, hey, let's be a bit smarter about what we advocate for. These issues, not only do they not seem to be true, but they're not popular either, so we'll advocate for them. And also, let's call out extremity in our movement if it's particularly egregious. That's basically what they've said. And now here we are. Well, this person who said that, like, dude, why are you invoking fucking Holocaust denial, dude? What has this got to do with anything, man? This is fucking shameless.
Him.
They stayed
Than
for
everybody
sushi.
else.
He stayed for sushi and bubble
Stay for
tea.
sushi and bubble tea. And that is not a measure of the way you look at humanity. And that should not be a dictate as to what you express publicly. If you've got a job where you are public facing, it is incumbent upon you to think about the implications of your words. And just like when, I celebrate the deaths of people who I think, like when Scalia dies, I'm like, yeah, good. He may have been a good father, good son, good brother, good, husband.
Not my problem.
That's not the issue.
Yeah.
I know this guy's name because of what he's done to the country. Same thing with Breitbart. Go on and on. You are judged by what you put out there.
Okay.
Period. End of story. Doesn't matter what's in your heart. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, I could be the most right-wing guy in the world. I could, if I go home and I have like a Hitler closet that I go into and pray every night, but I come out and I say things that are anti-fascist during the day. I'll take that versus the guy who's like going back and saying pure of heart, but coming out and like because of nuances. Hitler had some good ideas. Trains ran on time and people.
I'm begging people to come up with anything other than Nazis. Is it possible? Is it even possible? I don't even know anymore.
We're happy with the efficiency. Like, that's not the way it works. What you put out is what you get judged on. Not what's in your heart. None of that.
Not what you're maybe capable of in the
Not what
future.
you're capable. None of that. What you put out into the world, when you do this, that's what you get judged on. Period. We are two-dimensional.
Yeah. And that's why we don't stay, and not, this isn't about personal branding or anything. Like, why we don't, it would have been, that's why we don't stay for sushi and bubble tea, basically. It's because we actually believe in this. I really do believe in this, so much so that I'm like uncomfortable about talking about this on air. But I just think it's important to counteract it, obviously. So this, trans solidarity with Benny, who resigned from TYT.
Solidarity,
Seriously.
guys. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Funny. Funny how a term that originally was used to talk about Labour power has been grotesquely, twisted to identity issues. But hey, that is the modern online leftist movement, I guess. Anyway, there we go. Oh, I've got nothing more to say about that.